Hi, and welcome to the Ideaspring Capital podcast, the show where we discuss the latest trends in technology, startups, and tech entrepreneurship in India. Today, we have Vishal Khare, co-founder, executive VP and GM sales of Lavelle Networks, in conversation with Naganand Doraswamy, managing director at Ideaspring Capital. Vishal, a former director at Citrix, has immense business management experience in networking, cloud, on-premise software, hardware, and SaaS. He is now a co-founder at Lavelle, which offers software-defined wide area network (SD-WAN) platforms for enterprise networks. In this episode, they discuss Lavelle's journey in enterprise sales, how should an early-stage enterprise startup identify the right audience for its product, the importance of a defined sales process for a startup, the sales cycle for an Indian enterprise client, how to sell new and cutting-edge enterprise technology products to more traditional enterprise clients, and a whole lot more.
Hey Vishal, welcome to Ideaspring Capital podcast series. It's awesome to have you here today with us and so that we can talk to you about your personal experiences in sales and other aspects of building companies and look at what happened in Citrix when you're there and how you build the sales organization there, and now in Lavelle Networks, how we are building the sales and setting up the company for great success. So before we actually get into the sales aspect of it, would love to get a quick background about yourself and also what product Lavelle is developing and why is it important in the market today?
Sure. Thank you, Naganand. My background is that I was with Citrix for about 17 years and did many roles, and Citrix was very kind to give that opportunity. And also I've been an angel investor, so that interest was always there, that how do we help to build the companies in India and the companies which are originating out of India. And that interest led me to Lavelle Networks, where I am there as a co-founder. And Lavelle Network currently is working on software-defined network architecture, and we have come out with a product under SD-WAN category. And SD-WAN, as you know, is one of the hottest tech categories across the globe. And as per Gartner and IDC is concerned, they are predicting that this market will be anything in excess of $8 to $10 billion in next 2 to 3 years. That means there is a ample amount of growth which is available, and hence you see there is a lot of buzz which is happening with a couple of other vendors also trying to get into it. But we have done reasonably well, and we hope that we'll continue that streak.
No, that's great. I think when Ideaspring looked at Lavelle, that is one of the key things that excited us as well. That this is a new emerging space, and hence it's a good time for startups to go after the behemoths like Cisco and then see how you could get market share from them. Now, before we actually get into sales, would like to quickly start from the early stage of an enterprise. Like, how do you actually identify the right customer target, right customer segment? Because sales comes later, but you really need to get to your first few customers, right? So in that aspect, how did you go about identifying the first set of customers for Lavelle?
Sure. So for us, the starting point was simpler, because SD-WAN is a technology which is basically meant for companies which has multiple locations. So the first criteria was that any industry which has multiple location and which is easier to capture. So the answer what we got was retail. We thought we'll go after retail, and we had few successes in retail environment. Then we thought that which is the next industry which has maximum number of locations and will have more impact in the market. Then we realized that banking, financial and industry is the second best option. But what we realized that we were not ready for banks because the environments were more complex. It needed more security and things like that and all. So we thought we'll start with NBFCs and see that if we can succeed there. Fortunately, again for us, that we did succeed there. Then from there we moved to insurance. And then finally, in last 1.5 years, we continue to work to keep ourselves ready for banking. And hence, now we think we are ready for banking, and we have got a couple of customers also in banking arena. So net, what I mean to say is that it's very, very important for startups, the company who are starting in India, to figure out what industries, what sectors are more conducive for them, where they can get early success, and what is their eventual goal. So everything, if you can plan it out and this can be tied together, then I think it will be a logical movement.
From what I understand, from what you're saying, the key is to get a few key customers in the beginning. And then one has to be very careful how do you identify them and how do you get them on board. And once you get them on board, then needs to start looking at the next set of customers whom we can onboard, and then grow that step by step.
Exactly. Because see, if you go with a random approach, then I've seen in the random approach never works in an enterprise environment, because customer also needs to see that you stand for something. Because if you say that I do everything, then customer does not get confidence that you do everything and you stand for nothing actually. So it is always good to start with something and then you continue to build on top of it, so that you are taking next logical step and then next logical step in your journey.
Great. So I know you built sales organizations for a large organization for Citrix in India, and now you started building, almost from scratch, the sales organization for Lavelle, again in Indian context. Now tell me, how do you compare and contrast what happened in Citrix and what you had to do in Lavelle as well? Because I know you have solid knowledge in Citrix, but again, coming from Citrix, you're losing the brand and you have to start everything from scratch again. So would love to get your perspective on how you went about building the sales organization in Lavelle, and what you learned in Citrix helped you in this process.
Sure. See, Citrix kind of organization obviously trains you very well, and they train you for very high pressure kind of environment, and there is a very well defined process. The people get trained according to that well defined process, and if you follow that process, then probably the success is there. But when you get into a startup, when you get into building something from scratch, then you have to relook at everything from scratch, because you may be trained in the process, but you know that the process may not work exactly the way you want from day one. So what you build in initial days is a more functional process, which will help you to move much faster and gain some initial success. And that holds good for say about 6 months, probably 12 months. But then specifically for us, what we decided very early, we decided that we want to be enterprise player. And we wanted to build our company in that direction, because we wanted us to be differentiated from whatever is happening in the market. So it was good for us to be operating in enterprise market. And when we decided that, it was really, really important for us to look at everything about the company, whether it is sales process, whether it is people, whether it is documentation, whether it is PPTs, what we are making, the support ecosystem, what we are creating, the partner ecosystem, what we were creating, marketing, the way we were doing, everything was required to be overhauled, so that we actually start looking bigger than what we are. And then once we all of us were on the same page, after that we started looking at sales process. That can the sales process from a simplified of opportunity identification, POC and closure, that was our sales process in the initial days. From there, can we look at more evolved sales process, which will help us to tackle larger competition, which will help us to deal with larger customers' expectation, and help us to prevent any leakage in due course of sales cycle. So we built a 12-step sales process, which helped us to hold on to this, and customers started looking us very differently, and they started thinking us that we are a worthy candidate for their contracts.
So you said you built a sales process. So is that hence a breathing animal, in the sense your sales process evolves as and when you add more customers? Because you brought in the discussion of ecosystem, like, where you need to have the partners ready, you need to have the channels ready, you need to have the distributors ready, you need to have the product marketing collaterals ready, right?
Exactly.
But at what point do you say, I have a sales process defined? Do you need to have that very early on, or you start developing that and that kind of becomes more mature as you evolve over a period of 1 or 2 years? So how did you go about identifying in Lavelle at what point what sales process makes sense? Because you can't have a very complicated sales process in the very beginning. You said you had a 12-step sales process later on, but that could have been just 3-step to begin with. So how did that evolve over a period of 2 years in Lavelle?
Yeah. So as I said, that in the beginning we had only a simple 3-step sales process, and that was like a functional, workable sales process. But then as we decided that we want to be an enterprise focused company, in our mind, we built a sales process. There was gaps in that process. I was very sure that we will not be able to plug in those gaps today when we build that process. And it was always supposed to be meant to be plugged as we go along. So we started then we from 10 customers we became 20 to 30, then 40, and so on and so forth. So as we continued to look at number of customers and the profile of customers, these sales process we started plugging in the gaps. So either from a people point of view, from documentation point of view, process point of view, tech support point of view, ecosystem, as I was explaining earlier. So all these pieces were there in our mind or on paper, but there were gaps in this. But all these gaps were required to be filled over a period of time. And I'm very happy to tell you that I think we have a sales process which is like well established now. And we have been able to plug in most of the gaps there. But yeah, it is work in progress. And as we continue to deal with bigger customers and we step out of the country, our sales process will continue to evolve.
Okay. So one other question I want to ask was, for most of our portfolio companies, all our portfolio companies start typically in the enterprise. We kind of end up saying, since we invest very early, the founders need to get the first few customers on board. And then one of the founders or can become the salesperson, like in case of Lavelle, where you have become the salesperson. Or at that point, you have to bring in somebody else from outside to handle the sales process. So in Lavelle, we are lucky because one of the founders could take on the role of the salesperson. Now, in cases where you don't have the luxury, where one of the founders can become the salesperson, because I think doing sales requires a different mindset and mentality, right? It's very, very different from what engineering or marketing would do. Sales requires a very different persona. So would you say that it is easy to hire a person from outside and blend them into the organization? Or would you say that it is better that one of the founders takes on that responsibility? What would you recommend, and what do you see works?
Yeah. So first thing I will like to mention to everyone who is going to listen to this is that sales is a specialized skill set. It's not that anybody can pick it up. Yeah, anybody can pick it up, but to what level you will be able to run through, I'm not sure. So I've seen that there are people trained in different format, and the way they react to different situations is very different. So that's the way the conditioning happens in tough sales environments. So coming back to startup, I think every company will be very, very happy if one of their founders can pick up that role and can do a good job there. But if you cannot, I will sincerely suggest that I think you should not pursue that endlessly, and you should find out saying that yes, this is working or not working, and immediately take a decision saying that yes, this is a specialized job and we need to bring somebody who is like skilled in this particular role. And nowadays what I've seen, because I have operated in startup ecosystem earlier as well, what I've seen is that there are many people who are open, who have like say 10-15 years of experience, who have seen enough in the market, who have a lot of contacts. I think they are very, very open to come on board with these kind of startup companies, provided the story is good, product is good, people are good, and things like that and all. So I think it's not that difficult, probably not what it was 5 years back, to find people who can do a good job and bring the story up. But caution is that you must find a person who actually can fit into such kind of environment and also can elevate your entire positioning in front of customer. That's very, very important.
Mm-hmm. And sales is a generally very tough process, right? It's a brutal business, and trying to get a check out of anybody is never easy. And in our case, what I've heard, I would like to hear your perspective on this, is selling to Indian customers is even harder because they're extremely price sensitive. Now, quick contrast between selling in outside markets as opposed to selling in India. What does the sales cycle look like? Do you see a lot of difference between selling in a Western market as opposed to selling in India? And also, what does the sales cycle look like selling in India?
Yeah, so I will say you're 100% right. In India, customers are very, very conscious about the feature functionalities, quality, as well as pricing. So it becomes like a double whammy for OEMs and the people who are dealing with the customer. But the thing is that because we are in this market, and this market offers a kind of scale what is not likely to be available in many countries across the globe. So it is an important market for every tech OEM. And you see that very, very large companies have made big investments in the country because of the potential and so on and so forth. So yes, the answer is yes. The pricing is extremely important strategy in India, that if you do a right product with the right pricing strategy, I think you can go a long way in this country. And what I've seen is that most of the multinational vendors, This is to benefit for the companies which are evolving from India. Most of the multinational vendor build a fantastic technology, and they perfect a model to charge more and more money from their customers whole of their life cycle, which I believe in today's scenario, many customers have figured that out and they've started disliking it. That for anything and everything, there is so much of money which needs to be paid once you are actually got into the first level of contract. So it is a great opportunity for startups like us, companies like us who are gone through some cycle, and people who are thinking of building enterprise product from country, that you must attempt, because now this is the right time where if you build a quality product and do a right pricing, you can actually take the battle head on in Indian context. And then obviously if you are successful here, you have a good set of customers, you can step out. And as you said that, dealing with customers outside India is relatively easier because they are more they have more evolved process, and the pricing is not that a big challenge. So even if you put a lot of resources and costly resources and all, the outcome is anyway aligned with that. But here the sales process, I will say from a step-wise step, it's a bit of complex because people like to do a lot of evaluation. They go through a lot of details because people are very, very knowledgeable at a customer level. So it becomes more tougher, and there are more choices which are available. So people go through everything in detail. So that adds to your sales cycle and hence the cost of sale. But at the end of it, I will say this is a very, very lucrative market. And if people build the right team, right process and right pricing strategy, I think the outcome will be there.
So that's great to hear that, right? I mean, like I said, all of us are very optimistic, and we think that India is a great market in certain segments of the enterprise as well. Not in all segments of the enterprise, but specifically where it's a distributed geography, because large country, large amount of distribution, and there are specific products that might really blend well in the Indian context. And Lavelle is addressing that specific market segment. And that is great. But you also addressed this pricing strategy. So what was your strategy for pricing in case of Lavelle? Because we are going against the larger ones. We are going against Cisco, and we are going against VMware because they have recently acquired startups in the US. And obviously they are feature rich, function rich. So how did you go about defining or identifying the right pricing strategy so that you can stay competitive and beat them in areas where you're coming across them as a competition?
Exactly. So for us, it was like a simple process. We determined what was our cost of hardware, software, people, facilities, everything. And then we decided we want to make this much of margin. We don't want to go for a killing of say 500%, 700% kind of margin. We wanted to be comfortable, which will be good for us, good for our investors, and good for customers. We built that kind of pricing. So it was a grounds up kind of pricing. It was not that if Cisco was selling at say X price and then we will do 20% less than that. Eventually where we landed was maybe outcome was same, but then our pricing strategy was built grounds up, where we looked at cost and all other factors and built that. And I'm very happy to tell that yes, our pricing strategy is a right working in the right manner in this market. And I will recommend everybody to take that approach only, instead of looking at how much others are making and how much you want to make and those kind of things and all. I think in the initial stages, I think this is the way I believe will work much better.
Okay. Now, we talked about this large competition, right? See, one thing we always tell our portfolio companies is, since you are a startup, you can move at a much faster pace compared to the large guys. But when you're going against them in deals, that's easier said than done, because the large guys typically have a lot more to offer, and they can show larger organization, larger strength, and then more depth in the product. Perceptions matter, and so on and so forth. So when these small startups hence go against these behemoths, pricing is one, and that will work to the advantage of the startup. But there are a lot of other things that goes against the startup, right? So what is your input or advice to the sales guys of smaller companies going against these behemoths as to how do you win against them? Because that's easier said than done. I'm very happy to see that Lavelle is winning against large guys in multiple deals, and that's fantastic and fabulous. Love for you to share some of the strategies that you think will work in general, right? Not specifically to Lavelle. What should smaller companies look for, and how should they position themselves to win in against the competition?
Sure. See, for us, the fundamental is that you need to build a technology which is good. A technology which is good and it works. There is no shying away from this. Like, you can't build an inferior product and say that I will tackle a market which is being looked at very seriously by the larger organization and all. If you build an inferior product, then you're done from day one itself. So it is very important that you do things in a right manner from the beginning. So after having built the right product, and the next step is very important that you find the right segment, as I was mentioning earlier, right segment where you can win faster. So that's very important. The third thing what you need to look at is that how do you do marketing about your own organization so that you look much larger than probably what you are. That way, marketing, if you are more innovative, it comes very, very handy to build that kind of right perception in the market. The fourth thing, which is very important, is that, see, you will always talk good about yourself. But can you find some good set of organizations who can back you up, either from partner ecosystem or from analysts or from your investor fraternity, the people who will listen to them, the customers who will look forward to hear from them, those kind of people, can they talk well about you? So fortunately, in our case, we were able to very early engage with Microsoft, and Microsoft support came very, very handy because they reached out to the customer. It was so nice of them that they spoke to customers on our behalf and put the position in the right manner. Now the relationship is evolving with Dell, and we are working with many ecosystem SIs. Our investors are also pretty well known in the market, so we sometimes take their help also to talk to customers. And finally, the analysts like Gartner also sees value in our story. So if you see, all this is kind of ecosystem. So it is very important for you to focus on this aspect as well, rather than just going plain vanilla, going and trying to sell. It is very important that you look at product, sales, process, marketing, ecosystem. Unless all this come together, it will be very difficult for you to have a sustained, successful stint in the market. One-off obviously can be there, but if you want to build a predictable model, you want to build sales organization, it will not happen unless until you look at everything holistically.
Agreed. And then, like you say, as I said, you have to be very patient, right? You cannot just assume things will happen day one. Like you said, have the good product first, and then at least get one or two customers who can vouch for you. And that's a really hard thing to do, to get the initial traction, and then slowly start getting other guys to watch for you and get the influencers in the market to talk about you, and so on and so forth. So it's at least a minimum 1.5 to 2 year journey for you to kind of get from point A to point B, where you say that, okay, things seems to be working to a little bit, right? Now, you spoke about partnerships, right? I would want to come back to that and talk to you about it. Now, sales is direct sales, indirect sales, partner sales, channel sales, OEMs, and resellers, a whole gamut of things. What would you suggest an early stage startup do? Focus on the direct sales, build certain traction in there, get some partners to help you in delivering that, then start channel sales, and then start resellers. So what path would you suggest that startups take? Is it very dependent on a particular startup, or is there a common guideline that most enterprise startups can follow to expand on sales?
I would say it's a common guideline, and if people go down that path, it will be easier for them in probably maybe second year, third year onwards. Normally, how we started, and I will say that most of the startups will start in this manner only, that you first go out yourself in the market and try to capture initial set of customers. Because when you are going out first time in the market, nobody knows you, nobody believes you, rather than knowing you personally and maybe your background and stuff like that. So it is very important that you transfer that enthusiasm back in the market to the customer. You make some commitments which are like a bit complex, but you still go ahead and make the commitment to customers saying that yes, we will do everything possible to make the setup successful and things like that. But then over a period of 6 to 12 months to 18 months, it is very important that you start looking at saying that how do we move next? And when we looked at all that, first thing what we realized that one of the main thing which were troubling us was this entire payment cycle, payment collection, and those kind of things and all. So all these multinational companies, and Citrix including, have this classic model of three-tier model, where you look at customer to partner, partner to distributor, and then OEM. So we thought this is the best way to do it, because here obviously your profit goes down by a certain percentage point, because obviously everybody gets some margin because of the value at what they are doing. But at the end of the day, if you want to build a model which is like highly scalable, I think this is the right way to do it. So the earlier you're able to figure out the set of partners who are ready to work with you, earlier you're able to figure out a distributor who believes in your story and who is ready to back you up, even though initial days something can go up and down. I think it will be very solid foundation you will be building for bigger things to come. Then once you have set all this up, then it is very important for you to pick and choose the partnerships what you want to have in the market. Like you want to have large SIs for larger projects, you want to have segment specific partners like government, banking or healthcare or retail and so on and so forth. And then some partners who will just live and die with you because of either you have known them personally or they've seen enough success with you in the market so that they will live and die with you. Because you need those partners to be very vocal in the market, talk to ecosystem when they are in forums and talk about yourself as a successful story and those kind of things, so that more and more partners come and work with you. And you need to take care of these initial set of evangelists who have gone along with you. So if you look at this entire thing as a program, which is like which can come into some sort of right shape in say 24 months from the day you start, 24 to maybe say 36 months from the day you start, I think that's the right path to look at it.
So that's that's great to hear. And in terms of your own journey in Lavelle, would you have done anything different if you're taking a snapshot of today, what you have done over the past 2+ years from a sales strategy perspective, sales channel perspective? Is there something that you think potentially if I had done that at that point of time would have scaled faster, or you think you took the right set of steps from building the sales organization? Is there any learnings for you, for yourself?
So, I will say there is nothing which is perfect. Whenever you look back, it is always you can do much better. So in our case also, I think because all of us came from different backgrounds, and many of us are with strong opinions, which works for the organization.
And that goes with founders. Right?
Exactly.
Founders means you have strong opinions. As you're not a founder.
Exactly. So because we come from different backgrounds, obviously we have different experiences, and we look at things differently. But the good point is that we all converge whenever we finally come out of the meeting room. So now if I look back on a couple of things, I think we could have done differently, like our competitive strategy. I think we could have gone much more in detail at the initial stage. We could have built a slightly better way to tackle competition in terms of maybe some features, maybe the way we were doing documentation, maybe the way we were doing trainings to our own people and maybe partners, so that they could have become more and more independent. Maybe another thing which we could have looked at is that could we have looked at product in such a way that we could have made something slightly more simpler in terms of doing demos and POCs, which could have been handed over to partners, so that we could have focused on more larger customers, and partner could have taken care of maybe mid-market and commercial segment, and our breadth would have been much larger and things like that. But there is always a scope of improvement. But largely, I will say that I think the steps what we took in last 12 to 18 months, I think were logical steps which helped us to land here. So I would not want to change too many things there, but there are obviously improvisations which are possible.
Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you to switch onto your investor hat, and from what you have seen in your portfolio or in the companies that you have worked with, doing enterprise products and selling to enterprises, what are some of the common mistakes you see them making in trying to sell to enterprises?
I think this is a very good question and close to my heart. So I have seen most of the founders behave in the way we are behaving, or probably what we behaved probably 2 years back. And most of the founders go through the same emotions, same cycle. Money is the concern, payment collection is the concern, business expansion is the concern, partner ecosystem, nobody is paying attention is a concern, and so on and so forth. So to start with, I will again repeat that selling is a specialized skill. See, product you will build because product has to be built, otherwise what will you sell? And it has to be built well. But selling is a specialized skill. After you have gone through maybe first 3 months, 6 months, find people who can do the right job for you. Otherwise, you will be up for failure at some point in time. So that is number one thing what I have seen people make that mistake. They continue to pursue with themselves, thinking that they will do a good job someday, and they're doing all the steps and why the results are not coming the way they wanted, kind of thing. So that's one important thing. Second thing is, I will suggest that you must build your organization from initial days itself to tackle the segments and the profile of customers what you need to tackle. It cannot happen that you've gone through in one particular sector or one particular kind of market size and then suddenly you wake up and say that now I want to do enterprise. It never happens. Enterprise selling is like the way you exercise. If you go and exercise your forearms every day or every week once, then only your forearm will get built. If you do once in a month and once in 2 months, then it never happens. So enterprise selling methodology is exactly same, that you build something which is more functional, which is more workable, acceptable to your customer profile, and you practice that. So when you practice, it comes in your behavior. When it comes in your behavior, you start projecting yourself very differently. And that projection actually customers can very well catch. So even though they may not give you the contract, but they start feeling that yes, these guys are worthy for our contract, maybe next time I will consider them. But this time I have to go with my compulsive choice of existing vendor, kind of thing. So these things are extremely important, which people fail to recognize the importance of all this, and they think that we'll just change the track and it will happen. It never happens like that. So that's second important thing. Then the third thing which actually worked for us is the speed of execution. Because for us, one thing which was very important was customer success. Like after you got the contract, what will validate your story? It is customer success. Customer saying that yes, this was implemented in time, it was implemented well, and I am ready to vouch for it. So we built a development and operations as a baseline and built a process of implementation which we can really scale as much as possible, because we have ecosystem vendors, partners who are supporting us to deliver the devices, do the implementation, and so on and so forth. So this process works for us, and I'm sure there must be something else for somebody else. But you must find a way where your speed of execution is faster than what is happening in the market. Like if a large MNC comes back with a SOW, which is say 12 weeks or 16 weeks SOW for a project which is of our size, what we are doing, and if you can turn that around, deliver the same quality of work in probably 6 weeks or 8 weeks maximum, then you will be much ahead. You will be ahead by 2 months or 2.5 months from whatever is happening in the market. So it is very important for you to look at that and then build the process in such a way that which helps you to have very, very fast execution speed without failing. You should not make mistakes. Like you are moving fast, you should not crash the car multiple times. So you should find a way that you really can move fast, but with a lot of process inbuilt.
So agility is very, very important.
Very important.
And that's where I think startups can beat larger organizations,
Exactly.
because startups can be a lot more nimble and agile compared to the larger guys. So coming to my final question, a fund like Ideaspring is betting heavily on enterprise products, right? Startups focusing on building products, cutting edge, new innovation for enterprises. And I think what we are seeing, like I have investment in Lavelle, that in India we are very competent and capable of doing that. But one of our pitfalls, or I can say, is although we can build good products, we have never been great in marketing and sales, right? And that's something we need to really learn from the Western world, because they're really perfect at the art of product marketing and sales, right? And we have to learn a lot from them. And you have had the fortune of having worked for a MNC, and now you're working with a startup, founded a startup, and and Lavelle is doing very well in the market and taking on big behemoths and beating them. So if I were to ask you, like, if for the founders and for the entrepreneurs, the 3 most important things that they have to focus in building sales organization, what would that be? What would you recommend that they do?
So I will try to pick up the points from whatever I've been talking till now, and probably this will be a summary of that. First thing, which is most important, is the product needs to be of good quality. You can't discount that fact. I had invested in a few companies, I can't name them, where after investment, I realized that the product itself was not good. Story looks good on paper, but then when you actually do the POCs and the customer feedbacks are there, the products were not that great quality. And then eventually, obviously, the problem starts happening. So the product needs to be extremely good. Don't shy away of investing in good sales leader and team. And this is where I think most of the Indian enterprise product startup companies start failing, that they feel that everything is so easy and it is manageable kind of thing. So that's second most important thing. Third thing is you need to build your marketing and ecosystem around you. Marketing person in your organization needs to be really innovative. Find a person who can do much more than in much less, because you will not have too much of money to invest on marketing, blow it in events and stuff like that. You need somebody who can build stories, who can build stories in a format where probably you don't need too much of complexity. Like I will give you example. We did one case study where we did not have approval, but we created an animated story. We spoke about general category and we posted it, and it gave us so much of leverage out in the market. So you really need a marketing person who is really innovative, who can create stories around many things and relate it back to your work. And the ecosystem is extremely important. So these 3 or 4 points will be my summary, my suggestion to all of you who are going to listen to this. And if you do this, I am sure it will lay a good foundation for next couple of years to come.
Yeah, I think there are awesome tips for founders trying to build enterprise startups in India, Vishal. And it has been fabulous talking to you. There are a lot of good information that you gave and actually practical stuff as you're getting your hands dirty in building an organization now. And Lavelle is doing phenomenally well in the market. And I wish you all the success in taking Lavelle to the next level. And we hope to host you in another podcast to say how you take Lavelle from where you are today to a multinational organization. And I really look forward to having conversation with you on that very soon.
Thank you, Naganand. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Ideaspring Capital podcast. If you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review and rating on iTunes, Stitcher, or the app that you're listening to this on. Ideaspring Capital is an early-stage venture fund investing in tech product companies in India. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at IdeaSpringCap. That is IdeaSpringCap. This podcast was recorded by Scapari, your complete digital marketing agency.